You wake up the morning after the storm expecting relief. The rain is gone. The wind has finally stopped clawing at the walls of the house. Sunlight pushes through broken clouds, and for a moment everything feels normal again. Then you step outside, branches litter the yard. Leaves cling to fences soaked in muddy water. Your bird feeder hangs crooked and perfectly still. Too still. Yesterday, your backyard was alive. Sparrows fought beneath the feeder. Cardinals flashed through the hedges. Somewhere nearby, a mourning dove called softly from the trees. Now there is nothing. No movement. No chirping. No fluttering wings hidden in the bushes. Just silence. And people who have lived through violent storms know this feeling well. The strange moment afterward when the world feels emptied out as if nature itself disappeared overnight. Then, just as you begin accepting the silence, you notice something lying near the fence. A bird you have never seen before is barely moving. At first, you assume it belongs nearby. Another backyard bird shaken loose by the storm. But then you look closer. The colors seem wrong. The markings unfamiliar. Maybe the bird is larger than anything that normally visits your feeder, or smaller and strangely thin. It sits beside the fence without moving, feathers pressed tight against its body, breathing in short, labored pulses. Stories exactly like this appear after major storms everywhere. Drivers discover birds collapsed beside highways after hurricanes. Families find worn-out warblers hiding beneath patio furniture. People in flooded neighborhoods describe tiny birds sitting motionless on porches, too weak to fly away even when approached. Many end up carrying these survivors inside, wrapped carefully in towels and cardboard boxes, trying to give them warmth long enough to recover, because storms do something most people never realize. They move birds. Violent winds can carry small migrating species hundreds of miles beyond their normal range overnight. Some become trapped inside rotating storm systems, where others are blown completely off migration routes into unfamiliar cities, neighborhoods, and coastlines. And many of these birds are not injured. They are simply spent. To understand why these birds appear so strangely calm after storms, you first have to understand what their bodies have just survived. A tiny songbird burns energy at an almost impossible rate. During severe weather, that rate accelerates even faster. Hours spent clinging to branches against violent wind, fighting cold rain, desperately searching for shelter. All of it drains the small fat reserves, keeping the bird alive. And once the storm passes, the crisis is not over. Food sources may be gone. Insects drown beneath floodwater. Seeds vanish under mud and debris. Familiar landmarks disappear entirely. A bird that survived the storm may suddenly find itself starving inside a place it no longer recognizes. That is why displaced birds sometimes behave in ways that feel almost unnatural to humans. They allow people closer than they normally would. They remain still beneath cars and porches instead of fleeing. Some even walk slowly into garages, searching for warmth and safety. For a brief window of time, survival instincts begin overpowering fear itself, and sometimes the depletion becomes so severe that birds can no longer remain airborne at all. They simply fall from the sky. After major storm, some cities wake up to scenes that feel almost impossible. Small birds scattered across parking lots before sunrise. Warblers gathered beneath glowing office buildings. Migrating flocks suddenly appearing in crowded streets where they should never exist. Sometimes the birds are alive but barely moving. Sometimes they are not. During migration, many species travel overnight using stars, magnetic fields, wind currents, and faint visual landmarks to navigate across enormous distances. Storms destroy that system completely. Dusty fog erases the sky. Lightning blinds orientation. Violent crosswinds push tiny bodies far off course. Fatigue slows reaction time until birds begin colliding with buildings, windows, and roads they cannot properly see. The scale difference is almost difficult to comprehend. A bird weighing less than a few coins is suddenly fighting a weather system powerful enough to uproot trees and flood entire neighborhoods. Most survive only by pressing forward until their bodies physically cannot anymore. And this is when some of the strangest human encounters begin to happen, because completely depleted birds sometimes stop fearing people altogether. People who experience this rarely forget it. A bird sitting quietly beside their shoe during heavy rain. A soaked hummingbird clinging to porch furniture through the night. A tiny warbler walking slowly into an open garage instead of flying away. Under normal conditions, wild birds avoid humans constantly. Their survival depends on caution and distance. But severe storms can push their bodies far beyond those instincts. After hours of fighting wind, cold, hunger, and fatigue, many birds enter a kind of emergency survival state. The world becomes smaller, simpler, not territory, not migration, not even escape, only warmth, shelter, water. Wildlife rescuers sometimes describe displaced birds allowing themselves to be gently lifted from sidewalks after storms, because they simply no longer have the strength to resist. And for humans, these moments feel strangely moving, because for a few brief hours, the invisible wall separating wild creatures from people seems to dissolve completely. But even after surviving the storm itself, many of these birds are still facing a far quieter danger ahead. They may never find home again. This is the part storms leave behind that most people never think about. Not every missing bird comes back. For small birds, survival depends heavily on familiarity. They memorize feeding routes, shelter locations, safe perches, migration paths, even the exact soundscape of their territory. A violent storm can erase all of that in a single night. Some displaced birds eventually adapt to unfamiliar places far from home. With time, they rebuild, finding new perches, learning new routes, carving out small corners of the world they can call their own again. Others keep searching, drawn by instinct toward a territory they can no longer find. And some simply run out of time before they can do either. Wildlife researchers tracking storm-displaced birds often notice the same sobering pattern afterward. Scattered survivors appearing alone where flocks once traveled together. Separated, disoriented, quiet. Suddenly the silence in your backyard feels different. The feeder that once erupted with movement now hangs untouched for reasons far deeper than bad weather. Some birds are still hiding. Some are still traveling, and some of the birds you watched every morning may never find their way back again. But survival stories do not always end in disappearance. Then one morning, the silence finally breaks. A single bird lands carefully on the feeder. Not loudly, not confidently, cautiously. Its feathers still look rough from the storm. It pauses longer between movements. Even its song sounds smaller somehow, softer than before. And suddenly you realize something most people never stop to see. The birds returning to your backyard after storms are not ordinary visitors continuing an ordinary routine. They are survivors, tiny creatures that endured violent winds, hunger, fatigue, confusion, and nights spent hiding from a world trying to throw them out of it. And yet somehow they came back. The next time you hear birds outside after a storm passes, listen carefully. That quiet movement in the trees is not just nature returning to normal, it is life rebuilding itself after chaos. A hidden survival story unfolding silently beyond your window, every time the sky finally clears again.